Welcome, everyone. I want to take a moment to thank you for attending the 10th Learning Views webinar in our series that's sponsored by Training Pros and Harrisburg University. Can everyone hear me? I'll be your host for this webinar. My name is Leanne Langford. I've been a relationship manager with Training Pros for over 8 years, and I'm serving clients mostly in the Atlanta area. Prior to working with Training Pros, I was an instructional designer, serving in different roles and industries for many years, including several years where I was in the consulting world starting in the year 2000. I've also been a volunteer with the local ATD chapter for 12 years, and I'm currently serving as the senior advisor for that chapter. If you're not yet familiar with our company, I'd like to briefly tell you about it. Training Pros is the leading provider of contract learning and development talent in the U.S. We provide organizations the talent they need to design, develop, and deliver learning solutions to their organizations when they don't have the internal capacity or the special expertise they need. We provide instructional designers, technical writers, e-learning and mobile learning developers, training coordinators, facilitators, and OD consultants on a contract basis. Our clients are able to work with relationship managers who are from the learning and development industry rather than non-practitioners. As a relationship manager, we take the time to invest in learning our clients' businesses. We consult on the right staffing solution for the project, and we provide the right talent the first time. Training Pros and Harrisburg University are partnering on the Learning Views webinar series because we want to share the latest talent developments that Training Pros is observing with our clients, and we want to demonstrate how Harrisburg University is able to provide a master's level program to professionals who want or need to pursue an advanced degree in the learning technology space. Harrisburg University translates the latest developments in learning technologies into a master's program for professionals responsible for building skills and capabilities in corporate organizations. Harrisburg University provides students with leading-edge approaches and skills to help them apply existing and emerging learning technologies in a variety of learning environments. Today's program is on the topic of how to create and use a career portfolio, which is a subject near and dear to my heart. In my role, I'm required to review consultants' portfolios, and I can testify that better portfolios result in better consulting opportunities. Unfortunately, many people don't spend much time on developing their portfolio. Our portfolio represents who we are to employers or clients. The first impression that we make on a potential employer or client is based solely on our career tools, such as portfolios and resumes. This webinar will guide you through activities that will help you build and use a career portfolio. You'll learn how to use your portfolio to get interviews, how to use it in interviews, and for our participants with jobs, how to get promotions and successful performance appraisals. Additionally, this session will show you how to create an electronic portfolio with minimal technical skills. Today's presenter is a personal hero of mine. Years ago, I attended his session at an ATD event on creating a portfolio, and I also purchased and read his ATD InfoLine book on the topic. Our presenter has over 25 years of experience as a faculty member, instructional designer, e-learning developer, and consultant. He has designed and taught online courses at the University of Maryland and other universities. He is specialized in career topics and issues. I'm honored to introduce Dr. Greg Williams.
Well, thank you, Leanne. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? You can chat in. I didn't know that I was a personal hero of yours, Leanne. I'm very honored. I'm not even sure I'm a personal hero to my own family, so that's very nice to hear. It looks like everyone is using the chat, and we'll be doing that throughout the course of this. Just a quick overview. I'm going to present for about maybe 35, 40 minutes, and then I'm going to reserve the rest of the time for discussion and question and answers, because from experience it seems that that's the most important time, is answering your specific questions. So I want to make sure that I'm answering your specific questions. Today is also a program that's near and dear to my heart. 100 years ago, I used to be a guidance counselor, so in a middle school and high school. So the topic has always been near and dear to me. And in my job as program director at the University of Maryland, their instructional design program, we have adult students, and their big goal is to get a job. So I'm talking with employers every day. I'm talking with adult students every day, working on their portfolios. So hopefully you don't think of me as an academic egghead, because I like to think of myself as a practical person. So let's get going. If you want more information on me, you can visit my website there. That's not super important, but just in case, I'd be happy to follow up with questions after the webinar if you want to get in touch with me. So there it is. The first thing I'd really like you to do, actually, is let me know, and I think Justin's going to bring up an activity here, is I want to get a sense for doing a little assessment. What is your current job? So Justin, can you bring up the poll here? Okay. So folks, if you can tell me what's your current job title, and you have about half a dozen there, that just gives me a sense of who you are. I always like to see the numbers kind of moving like this. It's like election night. You can see it change. Okay, so it looks like we have mostly, well, we've had a lot of others, but I would say instructional designer is a big one. Trainer, about 10%. All right, so that gives me, okay, OD consultant, hospitality sales coach, manager of learning enterprise, project coordinator, global leadership development manager. That sounds very impressive, Scott. Okay. All right, can we go back to the slides, Justin? Thank you. All right, so that's very helpful for me, folks. As you know, you always want to get an idea on who your audience is. Now, on this next part here, what I really would like you to do is, I always ask at the beginning of every session, is, you know, what are your expectations? What do you want to get out of this session? So at the end of this session, I want to, and then you can participate in the chat. So if you let me know at the end of the session, I want to know how to use my portfolio in a job interview. I want to know how to create an e-learning portfolio, whatever it is that you want. Within reason, of course. Jump through the hoops. What's legal? That's a big one. How to create one, okay. How to make my portfolio stand out, okay. Sell new clients, best practices, templates and online portfolios, memorable portfolios, get me hired on the spot. Ooh, wow, high expectations. Okay, create a portfolio that's worthy of this degree I worked so hard for. Best way to organize one. Okay, these are all good, and this is very helpful for me. So let's move on. We already did that one, I believe, so we could probably skip that one. Sorry about that, Justin. Let's go back to the slides. All right, so let's start our journey here. We have it's a short journey, but in a way it's long. So what I really want you to do now is, there's a simple one, and Justin's going to bring the poll. Do you have a portfolio? Do you have a portfolio? I'm making you work hard, aren't I, folks? Yes or no? Oh, it looks like a lot of people do not have one. Okay. Okay, so it looks like about 2/3 said no, that they do not have a portfolio. Okay. All right. Justin, if we can go back to the slides. Now, here's my follow-on question. We're not going back to slides. It's activity 4 we're going to do now. Okay, Justin, if we move to next activity. Let me get slides. Okay, so if I offered you your dream job right now, I have wizard-like abilities. I could offer you your dream job right now, but guess what? I need to see your credentials. So let's bring up that next activity, and I think you'll take a break after this one, then I'll do a fair amount of talking. If I offered you your dream job, is your completed portfolio ready to view? Those of you who have a portfolio. Oh my goodness, look at that. It was almost 100%. So if offered your dream job, is your portfolio ready to view now? Not in draft form, but ready to view now. Okay, this is interesting. So roughly over 90%, the last total here is 93.4 said no. So what lesson do we learn there? We can go back to the slides now, Justin. The lesson really is you never know when opportunities are going to arise, so you need to be ready. And Justin's going to bring back the slides, which he did. So does anybody remember the Boy Scout motto? What's the Boy Scout motto? Any former Boy Scouts out there? Be prepared. Yes, absolutely. So it is so competitive in this day and age that you really need to be prepared. All right, so what am I going to do today? Today, essentially, what I'm going to do is go through a very practical approach to this. People will say I'm an academic because I teach at a university, but actually I'm a pretty practical guy. So I'm going to give you some homework tips that you can work on. I'm also going to give you some very practical, hands-on ideas on how to proceed. So why a portfolio? Well, portfolios essentially have a couple of, click too much there. In this section, portfolios really give a good idea of who you are and what you can do. Just like actors and architects. What do they have in common, actors and architects? Did anybody tell me? I'll bet you can. Actors and architects are not related in a way, but they really do have something in common. Right-brain thinkers, okay, they might be. They build, rehearse. Okay. We're getting some good thoughts here. They're creative, and those are true. They have portfolios. Yes, absolutely. So if you're an actor or a model or an architect, you have a portfolio that you can give to somebody to demonstrate what you can do. So that's what we want to do. We want to have a portfolio because we can actually demonstrate to potential employers what we can actually do to help them. Now, the purpose of the portfolio, I think, is pretty straightforward. It's to demonstrate, essentially, what you can do. And it might even be called the smoking gun, actual proof positive. Proof positive of what it is that you can do, okay? So what actually goes inside a portfolio? Well, let's take a look. Now, Leanne did mention impressions, and it's kind of a cliche in a way, but you really don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So in-person interviews, it's, you know, how we're dressed, how we look, how we're groomed. Do we have crazy hair that day? Are we wearing appropriate type colors for a business environment, etc.? But the impression is really important because from an employer's perspective, and Leanne mentioned this a little bit, you are a piece of paper sometimes. If you don't have a portfolio, you are this resume. And if you have a lousy resume, it really makes a statement. Now, you don't want to be too creative. I mean, a lot of us work in a creative field in training and learning, instructional design, e-learning, but you don't want to get too creative. You don't want to outthink yourself. You want to be getting their attention, but you don't want to be so far out there that people are wondering what they're looking at. Now, sometimes we have links, and the links maybe go to documents that hopefully do not look like this, but again, that creates an image. And if you get this image when you click on somebody's online portfolio, you're probably not going to hire this person. Why? Well, because you're not going to have a whole lot of confidence in them, because if they can't get a link correct, well, probably they're not going to get some things in their job correct. All right, so let me give you a quick story. A few years back, I was heading the search committee, and we were looking for an associate dean. And my boss said, I want you to go through the resumes and the portfolios and the curriculum vitae and select a group for the committee to look at. I want you to weed them out. So I went through all these resumes and curriculum vitae and portfolios, and essentially one caught my eye. And it caught my eye for some bad reasons. Here's what happened. This person had a resume that looked like it had been copied about 1,000 times. And in the old days, when you recopied resumes, the little dots would appear on a paper. And if you copied that again, more dots would appear. So this guy's resume just had a ton of these little dots on it. And the coup de grace was that he had actually ripped out the ad from the professional publication that it was in, and essentially wrote he clipped that to his paperwork, and he stapled it and basically wrote in the margin, because he probably saw something very last minute and that he didn't include, and he wrote in the margin, P.S. I do e-learning too. So what kind of image do you think that person created with me? Well, he created quite an image, but it was certainly a negative one. So essentially, what I did was I took it to my boss and said, here's our person. Let's hire this guy. Let's bring him in for the interview. So anyway, he made quite an impression. So you can make positive impressions. You can make negative impressions. All right, let's move along to the contents. So here are some general contents that normally are in a portfolio. And keep in mind, portfolio is kind of an art and a science. There's a scientific aspect to it, and there's artistic aspect to it. So there's no hard and fast rule, but here's some things you should have in there. The bio and the resume, you might want to have some evaluations, a writing sample. Then we get into some of the specific issues, okay? Maybe, if you're a trainer or a teacher, courses that you've taught, designed, or developed, storyboards, videos. I don't have to read these off because you folks can read them. Anything that demonstrates your capabilities. So surveys or evaluations, those are always big ones. Job aids that you might have created. Now, what I want to do is real quickly is bring up an activity here because somebody alluded to this. And it's about policies concerning what work samples that you can share. So Justin is bringing this up. So I want to know, I'm curious about, does your employer have a policy concerning sharing employee work samples outside of the company? And it looks like sometimes when companies are smaller or newer, they haven't really dealt with this, so they don't have a policy. So it looks like about 70% so far are saying, yes, we do. All right. So it looks like that's holding true. So it's about roughly 70-30 or thereabouts. So it's almost like 75-25 now. Okay, I think we get the sense. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. And all right, so this is a big issue right here. The confidentiality, proprietary, or secret information. Number one, you have to know what your organization's policy is. You can't, because we don't want you to go to jail. I have a lot of students, a fair amount of students that work for the federal government. I'm based in Baltimore, Washington area, and a lot of my students work for the federal government. Some work for the National Security Agency. So they can share nothing, essentially. Now, your policy at work might be one where you could redact things or white out the name of the organization. It might be one where you can take snippets of information. But whatever you do, you have to make sure that you get that approved by the company. If worse comes to worse, what some people do that I work with and consult with and some of my students, they will work with as a volunteer with an organization. It might be a community-based organization, might be a nonprofit, it might be an organization similar to that. And they might, let's say, create a training course for them. And a lot of times nonprofits are very happy to have the extra expertise at no cost. And what it can do for you is it allows you to add things to your portfolio that you can share. Now, the downside to that is, yeah, it takes time. You can't really get around it. There isn't a great solution to that, but essentially when you work for a company, you have to abide by their rules, their terms and conditions. So what some people are doing is, again, they're volunteering their time and they're creating some portfolio work samples by volunteering for organizations that allow them to do that. So that is definitely a big issue these days. Let's move on. Now, accomplishments. We all have accomplishments, and accomplishments are essentially the backbone of our portfolio. Sometimes people, don't really know what their accomplishments are because they can't remember them. I would encourage you to look at old resumes, look at old performance appraisals, etc. They'll give you an idea of, what your accomplishments were maybe, 5 years ago or longer. Essentially, these are going to be the building blocks for your work samples. Now, if you have no idea what you want to put in there, here are some useful competencies that are kind of universal over the years. If you have any accomplishments that relate to increasing sales or revenues or resources, even nonprofits want to increase their resources. So that's one thing you can use if you have any accomplishments that relate to that. If you have anything related to increasing efficiencies, that never goes out of style. These are kind of tried and true things that work regardless of what era or decade or year you're in. So that's another one. If you have any work samples that relate to increasing efficiencies, that's helpful. Reducing and controlling cost. Again, that's almost universal in every single organization. Someone saying, do I consider these competencies or accomplishments? I think these are competencies. But essentially what you want is your accomplishments to prove that you are doing those things. All right, let's move along here. So what you can do for homework is your top accomplishments. We don't have time to do it now, but this is a brainstorming activity that essentially you can do on your own and just brainstorm about, okay, what are my top professional accomplishments? And you're going to forget about things, so that's why you need to do it and then maybe revisit it and go back and take a look at it again. Now, we're lucky that we, if we're in the learning and training and talent development area, there are professional standards. There are some professions that don't have professional standards, so we're lucky that we have professional standards that we can use to help put our portfolio together. So probably many of you are familiar with ATD, the Association for Talent Development, formerly ASTD, and they've pretty much outlined their competencies for us. So if you take a look at these are probably things that you've seen before, and these are in alphabetical order, not in order of importance. Let me add that the integrated talent management, that's a new item that they've put in there in the last year or so. And then, moving right along, learning technologies was not something that they had in there before. They thought that was almost like accepted, but they actually added that in the last year and a half or so. All right, so these are competencies, and obviously what you want to do is show an employer that you have these competencies. Or if you're in a profession, obviously, that doesn't relate to talent development or learning, training, instructional design, you're going to have your own professional association, your own professional competencies to deal with. If you want more details, I would refer you to go to the ATD competency model, and then when you click on these segments, it's going to bring you there. I forgot. You click on the segment, and I'm not sure if you can see this or not. It gives you kind of a breakout of that, but I'm gonna go back to to where I was. Okay. So I'm not sure if you could see that or not. All right. So one of the things that we're going to talk about now really is creating a cover sheet, or almost like a mini introductory letter to your work samples. Now, some people truly, they're not going to understand what your work samples are, and many of the people in the audience today are educators. So what we want to do is educate the readers or the viewers that this is what my work sample is. If you know nothing about it, this is what it does, and this is how I accomplish that. So we're going to have to educate them, because your work sample is essentially, the prospective employer doesn't really care about you, okay? What they care about is what you can do to solve problems for them. So that's the kind of mindset you have to get in. You really have to think like a hiring manager. And if you're the hiring manager, you want someone who could make problems go away, that could be creative, solve problems, and produce results. Those are the things that managers want to hire people for, okay? They don't care that you have 10 years of experience. How does that translate into solving problems for them? So when you have a work sample, one of the things you're going to need to do is introduce it. So there is a format that I've created that you can use to actually do this, and it's called the CCAR format. And essentially, it's very, very simple. There's a context, competency, context, action, and result. So the competency identifies the competency, obviously, so it might be instructional design. The situation was, I was working in an organization that was having high turnover, blah, blah, blah. The action, my boss had me create a new training course that I was the chief instructional designer on, and turnover was reduced by X%. So that's the competency, the context, the action, and the result. So let's take a look at an example. So a competency would be designing learning. All right, that's one of APD's competencies. The context would be sales revenue were down. What did you do? You created the first online training course. What are the results? Well, sales revenue increased by 24%, and you're claiming at least some credit for that. So that's one example. Here's a second example. Let's take a look at this one. Competency, delivering learning. The context, remote staff can't get access to training. What did you do? What action did you take? You taught the company's first online course. What were the results? The processing errors were reduced by X% after the course was implemented. So these need to be attached to every work sample that you have, because you're going to have people that are looking at your work samples that don't really know the field of training, learning, instructional design very well. A lot of organizations hire by using committees and search groups, that sort of thing. And there's a group of people, and they like to get 5, seems to be a typical number, because it's not too big, it's not too small. It's an odd number, so if they're voting on who gets the job, there's an odd number, and that would take care of tiebreakers and things like that. And invariably, there's always at least one person in this group that doesn't understand what we do for a living. So it's our job to educate them on what work samples are, what they mean, what they do for the company business-wise, and what are their results. So what you can do this evening, if you want, is you can take a look at that CCAR method and use it to format your work samples, so you're introducing them to the reader or the viewer. So every work sample should have a CCAR formatted introduction sheet. It could be very brief. Now you might say, well, Greg, I don't like your CCAR format, and that's fine. What I would encourage you to do is have some sort of document that introduces the work sample to the reader. If you don't have one, you can start out with mine, and then maybe you can use something else. All right, so let's talk about managing portfolio. It used to be in the old days that managing your portfolio was very difficult when it was paper. Now with electronic, excuse me, it's much easier to do. And it used to be that if you want to have electronic portfolio, you had to know something like Dreamweaver. Well, that's really not required anymore. There are a lot of free tools out there that you can use to create your own website if you want to go ahead and do that. You don't have to spend any money, but these take time. So you don't get a great website by working on it for like an hour or two. It could take a lot of time. But the good news is it's really not necessary in many cases. I talk to a lot of employers, and what they tell me a lot of times is, look, we're not hiring them to be a web designer or a website developer. We just want to see their files. If they have videos or PDFs or Word files, whatever, that show design plans or instructor guides or needs analysis, etc., they don't need to be housed in a particular website. So that's the good news is you don't necessarily need a website. Now, some people still want one, and that's okay. You can go ahead and do that. Now, you're going to have all this electronic information, and what I would encourage you to do is use it to market yourself. There are a lot of opportunities now, career-wise, to market yourself, and it's easy to do that once you have portfolio, because now portfolios mostly, consist of electronic files, PDFs, video files, might be an audio file. So they're easy to take and then help market yourself. You want to be able to create that digital presence out there. You shouldn't be shy about doing this. There are a lot of people that get jobs that have their information simply posted somewhere on some social media or a link to it. So you want to take advantage of that to create a digital presence that's definitely out there. Do people have a LinkedIn site? A LinkedIn account? Yes. LinkedIn has proved to be probably the #1 social media in terms of work and a professional presence. LinkedIn is, you don't have people doing stupid dog tricks on that or stupid pet tricks. It's pretty much, here's your resume. You can attach files to it. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I would encourage you to create one. Recruiters look at that heavily. I'm sure Leanne could probably talk a lot about this. But a lot of people I know, including my students and current students and alumni, and my current students are adult students. I mean, even before they graduate, a lot of them will get contacted by recruiters. So there's a lot you can do on LinkedIn. So utilize that. You can add files on there. It's doing more all the time now that it's. I think it has bought. Oh gosh, I want to say SlideShare. So you see a lot of professional presentations linked in there too. So it can do a lot of things. And one of the things I found out on my own, well, actually not on my own, through a webinar workshop that I took, is one of the things that really goes on the most, besides your initial summary, your job summary, are your titles. So make sure your titles are something that's going to attract people's attention. All right, now you can't lie about what you do, but if you work for the federal government and you put down management analyst, that's probably not going to be understood. So you want to be descriptive. Okay, so let's see. Justin, can you bring this up? Although I think I might have already.
Yeah, I think it was the LinkedIn one, so I think we can just.
Yeah, let's skip that one. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So if you haven't got your own web domain name, I would encourage you to do that. For example, I have a web domain, gregwilliams.net. I couldn't get the gregwilliams.com because there was a B-list country music singer that has that, the .com. But I would encourage you to get your own web name, your website domain name, because it's only about $10 a year, and it's worth it. It helps in terms of marketing yourself. There are a lot of sites you can go to do this on. I went through GoDaddy for no particular reason, just because I was aware of it. There are a lot of sites. People will say, well, what if it's taken? Well, .com is probably the most desired one. Net might be the next one. There are a lot of creative ones that are coming out now with, .expert and .guru. There's info and biz. So I don't have any research on, what ones are the best, although anecdotally people will say that .com is probably the most desirable one. But I would go get that if you don't have it. Now, how do you use your portfolio? Well, you can use it in a job search and an interview. Okay, I would include it in your cover letter and talk about it in your interview. A lot of times now when we send things electronically, that's a nice, if you have a link to it, then that's a nice lead-in. You're kind of serving it up to the reader saying, here, click this. It'll take you to my portfolio. That's always helpful. You want to include the website link if you can, like at the top of your resume, for example. I would include, if you have a portfolio site linked, I would definitely include it in that. If you actually go to the job interview, I would bring a laptop computer. In the old days, we would actually bring our portfolio, our hard copy. I would bring a computer that has all your information on it, because when they ask you a question, well, tell us what your strengths are. Tell us what your weaknesses are. Have you ever had an example, an instance where you dealt with X, Y, and Z? And you could say, yes, I actually have. Here, I'm going to show you an example of my design plan that addressed that particular issue in our organization. And here it is. And people are really into that. So definitely bring a laptop to the interview. You want to send a thank you letter or a thank you email. Again, I would remind them, I have a portfolio. Here's the link to it. In the interview, you mentioned instructional technology. I didn't realize that that was a big need of yours. Here are some multimedia presentations that I've created in Storyline or Captivate. So you're following up on the opportunities. You're trying to, give yourself a number of opportunities to show them what you can do. And send it, of course, additional work where it's appropriate. They might have mentioned something in the interview that said, oh, a real need we have is X, Y, and Z, and you didn't have any work sample on that with you, but you had one at home, so you can send it to them later. That's okay. Any reason to get in front of them is always a good one. So, Justin, can we bring up Activity 7 here? Would it be considered, the question, would it be considered sharing company info if you share a sample electronically but not leave a copy? I would say, yeah, it would be. Now, there's no evidence of that, so that would probably be an ethical issue, but if you're not supposed to share information, you're not supposed to share information, whether you're saying it verbally or not. That would be my answer. Okay, so do you have a portfolio website linked or cited in your resume? Well, the answer for most people is no, and it just goes back to the fact that a lot of folks don't have a portfolio, so that would, but anyway, whether you have a portfolio or not, you do want to mention that in your cover letter. You do want to mention that in your resume. You do want to put it on LinkedIn that you have that. It's almost getting to be the standard. Justin, thank you very much for that. Activity, and we're going to move on. Okay, so in your current job, you can also use your portfolio. Here's how you can do that. If you have a boss like I've had in the past, sometimes bosses are so busy, they forget what you've done in the last year. So a portfolio is great. Show them work samples for your performance appraisal. You can also use those work samples as evidence for a promotion. Another way you can use it is evidence for a pay raise, because believe me, I don't think I'm atypical. I think there's a lot of bosses out there that they forget what their staff does. They might know in general, but if you give them the evidence, the work samples that you've actually created, that's very helpful. Also, it might identify areas for your own professional development. Because one of the things that you want to do is you want to share your portfolio with your professional colleagues. Why do you want to do that? Well, you want to get feedback. Sometimes we think we're great, and maybe sometimes we are, and maybe sometimes we're not. But it's always a good idea to get feedback on that. So if you have a portfolio and you can share it with your coworkers or professional colleagues, what can be used in place of work samples? Not all jobs require a physical document. Well, a lot of the jobs that are in my field, which is in instructional design, training, e-learning development, almost all of those now, it's getting to be the standard where they are asking for work samples. So it's not a de facto requirement, but I would say most of them do, Inez. So I'm not sure. I mean, sure, there are jobs where it doesn't require a portfolio, but if you can prove to somebody, okay, I saved the company money, and here's how I did it, here's an example, I think that's more impressive than somebody just talking about it, saying, well, here's what I did. The difference between talking a game and playing a good game. All right, so let's move on. So other ways we can use portfolios, we've talked about LinkedIn to market yourself, references for clients if you do any consulting or part-time work. Portfolio can be a good way to get a reference and use a reference. It's also a good way to demonstrate your expert opinion, because a lot of times people are looking online. I have gotten, I'm not unique, I'm an average guy. I have gotten consulting jobs just from what I've posted online. People look at me, look at that sometimes and say, ooh, he can do what we want. Then they'll contact me, and I've gotten part-time consulting gigs that way. So I don't think I'm unique in that. And I see that Leanne's chatting in here about facilitators to videotape themselves. I absolutely require, I think that's a great idea. I get asked about that too. So you definitely want to videotape yourself presenting or facilitating. So your ideas, how else could you use a portfolio? I'm sure I haven't covered every single way. How else would you use a portfolio? You can put it in the chat, folks. How else would you use a portfolio? Don't be shy. I see John is typing. To introduce yourself, okay. That's a good way. What else do we have, folks? There's an example for students. Yeah, that's a good one. Outside consulting, moving to a new market. Yeah, those are great ideas. All right, thanks for sharing. Okay, so here are three things that are really predictable in life: death, taxes, and interview questions. These three important interview questions come up almost in every single interview, or a variation thereof. Why should we hire you? What can you do for us that others can't? And your strengths and weaknesses, okay? You're going to need answers to those because they come up in pretty much every interview or questions very close to that. Now, what's even better is if you can have work samples that actually prove that actually demonstrate that. So it's not just talking a good game, but it's showing them, I haven't just talked this game, I've played this game and I've won. So I would encourage you to do that at home. That's 3 interview questions. You think those out, you should have those down cold because you know they're coming. It is very predictable. All right, so now we're going to talk about mistakes. Anybody catch my humor there? All right, terrific. Here we go. So here are the mistakes with portfolios as I see them. Number 1, people don't have a portfolio. That's probably, I think, the biggest reason. People don't have a portfolio. That's a mistake. The other one is they include irrelevant information. We might not care about certain things, but some people put things that aren't very relevant to the job that they're applying for. You know, it might be great that you're a yoga teacher, but if it doesn't apply to the position you're applying for, I would leave that information out. So make sure to include relevant information. A lot of people have information on there that might be outdated. You know, the old automated data processing that they used to call computer science and things like that. So you want to make sure that you have updated skills and expertise. You want to make sure you have measurable results. So if you remember, you go back to that CCAR thing, the results, ideally, you want them to be measurable, okay? Because that lets the viewer or the interviewer know what you're capable of doing. It's not always possible, but measurable results are preferred. You want to get feedback on your portfolio. Share them with your colleagues, with your professional colleagues, with your coworkers, other colleagues that might have knowledge of the field. People are talking about dates. Yeah, you don't really have to put dates on items in your portfolio. It's not really necessary. Sometimes things go out of style, sometimes they don't. Now, please back up your data. This isn't just a portfolio thing, but you can't believe the number of people I've talked to that said they've lost all their data. And I said, well, okay, just use your backup. And then I find out after many tears from their side is that they didn't have a backup. So please back up your data because your portfolio is very, very important. Not putting in the time, okay? So there's lots of things we can do at work and at home, but you have to put in the time. You know, creating your portfolio does take time. You don't want to be shy about marketing yourself once you get this coordinated all together. But probably the biggest mistake is people sit by actively and don't take hold of managing their career. It's your career. You have to take the bull by the horns and manage it. You don't want to be at the mercy of someone else. You want to be proactive. All right, so heading down the home stretch here. So you have some homework to do. I'm going to have you write up a personal action plan. Homework? Did he say homework? Yeah, you got some homework. What I want you to do, here are some things for you to consider for your personal action plan. You can identify your career goals, competency, your accomplishments. You want to basically gather potential work samples. You want to use the CCAR format. You know, update your resume. You're not going to complete this over a weekend, folks. There's a lot of information here. You want to get feedback and you want to revise it. So hopefully this isn't your action plan, just ignoring this. And you're probably wondering, should I do this or not? Well, you should. You really should do this. Now, you want to stand out. Hopefully you do stand out. You don't want to look like, you know, Mr. Cookie Cutter. You do want to be memorable. This is why you need to do this before you're thirsty. You have to dig that well first, because a lot of times jobs get advertised. They have a very short response date now because they're almost trying to eliminate people. So you have to be ready. You don't want to leave things to chance. This is your career. It's important. It's not going to happen overnight. So don't worry about getting it done over the weekend. That's not going to happen. But you have to take that first bite of the elephant. Here's the big thing: the difference between urgent and important. And you know, getting our taxes done, that's important, although it's not necessarily urgent. Urgent might be someone's ringing your doorbell. Okay, so you have to answer the door. It might not be important because it might be, you know, a door-to-door salesman. So try to distinguish between what's urgent and important. Usually our careers are important, but they're not always urgent. I like Stephen Covey's quote here that, you know, most of us spend too much time on the wrong things, essentially reacting to urgent things and not working on important things like career tools and career documents. So this is an ongoing journey here. Hopefully you're going to be successful down the road. And that's the end of the formal presentation. What I want to do now is open it up to questions and answers. is there a really good, okay, let's see some examples. Okay. I don't have any examples for you at the moment. I apologize for that. There's not a lack of them out there, though. Justin saying that the recording will be distributed. Other questions, folks? Question came in earlier. Okay, cover letters. Cover letters, essentially, I think, they're not critical. They are important because they basically introduce you to the employer. What tools do you recommend? You know, I would say most portfolios that I've seen are simple documents that are usually contained in format files like a PDF. A PDF, I think, is good because then it's universal. Everyone usually has a PDF reader, so they can read it. So what you created in is probably not super important. I've used OneNote, but not in a long time. What if you have two types of jobs? How do you market yourself? Corporate training job I love and a music gig on the side. Well, if you're a musician, you have perfect opportunity to market yourself because you can have recordings and videos. So I would suggest two separate portfolios. Sometimes, I mean, I work with some people that will say, well, I'm an instructional designer, but I'm also a marketing specialist. Well, unless you're applying for a job that's requiring both of those, the employers probably don't care if you're a marketing specialist if they're really advertising for a designer. Should the portfolio link documents and interactive media files? The best hosting sites? Let's see. You know, I guess it depends on what kind of media you're using. I know that, I mean, I have a podcast, and the site that I use to host audio files is called Libsyn, Libsyn, and that works really, really good for audio files. Other questions? Should the portfolio be tailored? Yes, the portfolio definitely should be tailored. You should have like a closet full of items. For example, everybody probably has a clothes closet, and in that closet are things, are outfits that you pull out for a specific occasion. If you're going to work out, you pull out workout clothes. If you're going to church, you pull out church clothes. If you're going to work, you pull out work clothes. And portfolios are the same way. You might see a job that advertises certain things like, okay, we want you to be an instructional designer, but we also are going to have you do some instructional technology development. So in that case, you want to include some samples of your instructional technology expertise. So you would tailor for every particular job that you are applying for. Advantages of having a hard copy portfolio. There are some, although there's more advantages to an electronic portfolio. Hard copy portfolio is, you know, some people are worried about, well, if I post it online, people are going to steal my stuff. That's probably less likely with a hard copy, although you can't distribute it as much. Advice to someone getting their master's who currently doesn't work in the e-learning industry, what could I use as a portfolio? Well, I would go and use some of those things that I covered earlier about increasing sales, increasing resources, increasing efficiency, controlling costs. Those are work samples that I think are universal that every organization probably wants. Do you have to have a portfolio in one document? No, they're easier editing if you keep them like in separate files, because then you can kind of mix and match, pick and choose. Portfolio length. There's no prescribed length for one, but what I would say is when you're applying for a job, I would include like about maybe 5 or 6 work samples in your portfolio and let them know that I have more if you want to see them, but you don't want to overwhelm them. Let's see, okay. All right, I might have missed some questions because they're coming in fast, so feel free to put them in again. I know we're getting close to the end of the appointed time here. It's 57 minutes past the hour. What other questions do you have, folks? Okay, portfolio learning. Could a website replace a portfolio? You could have a website that could replace a portfolio. You could host documents, or you could just put it on the website. Cover letters, I think they're important, although I think they're less important now because I think people cut right to the chase and they want to look at your portfolio items. How do you protect or copyright? You can use that symbol to copyright the information, although, to be honest, you're probably not going to have a great deal of control over that. What awards or letters? I'm not sure what that question means. How do you count for work that has copyright? Another example, a course designed for a school. Well, again, you have to go back to the school or the organization and ask them what their policy is, specific policy. They might allow you to take excerpts of things or screenshots, and that might be fine. Are master's coursework acceptable as work sample? I would say yes. We have a program here at the University of Maryland where essentially students work on project work. They don't really take tests. And we have students that have gotten jobs before they've received their master's by using their work samples that they've created in their courses because they're working with real live clients. Okay, the meaning awards or letters of recognition for work that could not be done, could not be shared. Rhonda Lynn, I'm sorry, I still don't understand what you're asking me. You're trying to type again. Okay, sorry. I'm not understanding your question.
It sounds like if there's some, if a company gives you an award as the best instructional designer, or if you get any sort of accolade or those type of things that you include, not exactly awards.
Okay, I to me, what I think is more important, while that might be important, I think what's more important is you earned that award for your particular performance. So what can you use to document that performance? I think that's, because awards are subjective. Just like in LinkedIn, one of the things is kind of my pet peeve. All these people endorse each other. Well, what is that worth when I endorse somebody that I don't really know all that well? I endorse their project management capabilities, or I endorse their accounting abilities when I might have very little knowledge about that. All right, folks, I think we're coming up to the close here. I always like to finish on time. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your time and attention. And I think my contact information is going to come up here if I click on the right slide. So if you have questions, you can contact me. A resume is not necessary. No, they are. They are necessary because resumes will actually, I think, be helpful. Remember, portfolios actually help to prove or document. A resume is a claim. I don't think they're going to go out of style, and I think you should have one.
So thanks a lot, Greg. This is Justin. If I could just ask folks to stick around for just one more minute. I want to wrap up. We have some feedback slides and a few other slides. So thank you very much, Greg, for the presentation today. I know I learned a lot, and it looks like a lot of other folks did too. And thank you very much, Leanne, for the wonderful introduction from Training Pros. We'll quickly move through a few slides here, and then if you bear with me for just one more moment, then we'll get to our presentation slides. Again, Harrisburg University, many programs that are available for you, including the Learning Technologies Master of Science program. We also offer webinars such as this and other topics. This is Dr. Williams' program at UMBC, which sounds like a very strong program. It's worth checking out. And it looks like there's also a new an ISD Now forum. So I'll give you a second to maybe grab that link. And just a reminder, the recording will be available at the end of this session. If you glossed over something a little quickly and you want to go back and check it, that'll be available for you. And also thanks again to Training Pros for their role in the partnership. Could not be done without them. Again, thank you, Leanne. So I'm going to move to the feedback slides. Thank you for sticking around. Please do give honest feedback. We take it seriously. We do try to implement the feedback from the participants so that we can make these sessions just as good as they can be, because we have a lot of fun doing them and there's a lot of good information out there that we're trying to get to folks. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank the presenters, and we'll see you next time.